Monday, January 27th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, Memorial University's Centennial 100, we are going to talk about a growing list of folks whose stories helped define the university. We're talking changemakers, groundbreakers, and trailblazers. So this is a follow-up show. We did our first one back, Lisa, when was it? Weeks ago, months ago, a couple months ago.
About a month ago.
Month and a half or month, yeah, there we go. Back, was it December? I can't remember. Time is a flat circle.
It is.
In late 2024, we'll just say that.
Okay.
So we did this show, and at the time we didn't have any names of this Centennial 100, right? So 100 folks whose... like the university is recognizing 100 people whose stories help to define Memorial University. So you're going to find out who some of them are today. And just like last time, because both parts of the show were fantastic. So just like last time, the lines are open, and we're asking again if there's someone in your life who went to Memorial University and you want to talk about them. Maybe they made an impact on their community for you personally within the university while you were there, someone who you feel should be recognized for their work, their passion, their influence. The lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. So the Lisa I mentioned is Lisa Browne, VP Admin, Finance and Advancement for Memorial University. Also joining us back on the show, Nicole Obiodiaka, who is a MUN alumnus and one of the people on the list. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hold on, let me scroll down. I got my computer open here. So you are on the list for champions, the athletes, supporters, and activists who lead the charge. It says committed to community. I mean, I know this. You've been on the show before. We've talked. How did, when you found out you were on the list, what did you think?
I was pleasantly surprised. I would say that.
Yeah.
I was really happy that the work that I was doing in the community was being recognized, and I was happy to know that I had made an impact. And I was also, I guess, happy for the support in general that the community has provided Memorial as a whole. So yeah, the word was happy and pleasantly surprised. Happy and pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. And we'll come back. I'll go back to Lisa first, then we'll come back and talk about some of that great work that you've done and continue to do. How is the process going? Because, the first 10 names are out. We had lots of response for the show that we did, but how is it all going with this whole process?
It's going great. So this is the 100th anniversary of Memorial University, and one of the challenges you always have with an anniversary is telling the story. And so we decided that we would tell 100 stories of people who have contributed to the university and made an impact. And through that way, we would actually tell the story of the whole university. And so Centennial 100 is what we're calling it, and the first 10 have been revealed, and Nicole is part of that 10. And I think you can really see when you look at those 10, the story of the university evolving. And so we have some people who made a contribution very early on in its history, and more recent people, such as Nicole, who have really contributed in the past few years, really. And so the response has been incredible. I think before we even announced the first 10, we had about 100 nominees. And now it's gone even more so since we released the first 10, and I guess it's become tangible for people and people can actually see and read about the people, then the number of nominations coming in are really fantastic.
Yeah, I think because when I was looking through the list too, because we talked, right? We did a whole show, we talked, and it was this thing that I had lots of ideas around who and what and what I thought. But then when I looked at the list when it came out, I was like, okay, I completely, and it was right. My brain was pretty much there anyways, but then to actually see some names, and folks, we're going to talk more about some of these names through the hour. And also, if you want to call us, the lines are open with your own thoughts. But as I looked down through, just like you said, right, it's really a look at the university and how it's grown and changed over time, and like the importance of the people's stories for that institution.
That's exactly it. And I think some people, people have been looking at the names and the faces of those people. But when you get onto our website and read the stories, mun.ca/100, and really understand the contributions, they're quite something. And I think when you look through the names, you'll see that they've made a contribution to our university, but also much wider to the province and to the country and internationally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big part of it, right? Anytime, if you're looking at folks whose stories help define Memorial University, well, those stories, like defining the university, those are stories of community impact, of person-to-person impact, of folks who've done stuff that others take notice of and have helped uplift certain narratives and certain storylines for decades.
It's very
even a century. I mean,
exactly. It's very true. And I mean, I think of George Story, for example, and his work in linguistics, the Dictionary of Newfoundland English, and he was working on that when it wasn't really overly popular, and I think he helped create a culture where we are proud of our dialect and the words and our culture and our heritage. And so it's been fascinating. I must say, even I, when I knew they were coming out, and I just was glued to the website reading every word, because it was so fascinating to really learn more about people. And sometimes you hear the name and you might have your own image or perspective, but reading through their contributions is really impressive.
So, Nicole, let's talk more about you. When did you finish? When did you start at Memorial University?
I started in summer of 2019, so May.
Right.
Yeah.
What were the first couple of days or first few weeks like at the university when you started, if you can remember?
No, I do.
I figured you could. I was like, I'll give you an out just in case you want it.
I most definitely do. I didn't know that starting in May wasn't typical. So like the usual, where all the excitement is like fall, welcome week, things like that. And there was me in May. Like, oh, okay. And it was different. And but it doesn't mean different isn't bad. It was just different. So it was quiet, peaceful, cold, very cold. And I guess due to the fact that I came in the summer, there wasn't really that much going on, which is typical. Like people take time off in the summer and whatnot. So I found it a bit difficult to connect with people. I was brand new to the province, brand new to Canada as a whole. So I found it really difficult to connect with people outside of the residence, because I lived in Burton's Pond at the time. So I started with church. I was told to go to church if I wanted to meet people. And I was like, that's cool and all, but that's a bit crazy. That's the suggestion that I have, right?
Like, okay, if I have a list, I'd like to have more than one thing on the list,
like,
right?
Just church on my own.
Like that's Sunday mornings, but there's much more to the week.
Exactly. And then they were like, okay, like fall gets better. And the fall in question, it was nice. Like there was a lot of things that were happening to engage the student body as a whole. But I personally felt like there could be a bit more to cater to, I guess, different groups and different backgrounds as well, to create a safe space and to make sure that they're included and kept in mind with that programming. So that's sort of what created the synergy or the motivation in me to try to create, I guess, more events, more safe spaces and things like that for people of different cultures as well, so that they could feel included and they could connect and they could, reach out to one another because it's not an easy transition to go through. So it's nice to have those extra resources there. But I'll give a huge shout out to the internalizations office. Without them, I don't know where I would have been. They helped me a lot with little things like your social insurance number, still the same thing, like connecting with people that are going through the same thing, connecting you with resources, where to go. So that was like I held on to the internationalizations office for any and everything. So that was really helpful.
And you got so involved, right? Like I knew from talking to you before, but so part of MUNSU, we served on the Senate, organized Black History Month events, became the first Black student representative to serve on the Canadian Federation of Students, helped revive the Black Students Association, also organized the first annual Black-owned vendors market in 2021. So St. John's Farmers Market, more recently on George Street, and Centra Cultural Collective, an organization that offers information and provides resources for underrepresented entrepreneurs and artisans. That's quite the list. Plus, you got like a full-time job and everything else.
Yeah.
I know it was your student stuff, but Centra continues, right?
Yes, Centra continues. Yes.
Okay.
So right now we are working on, a couple cool things for Black History Month that's coming up. So we have the market on February 16th, and we're doing a really fun event with the RCA Theater. It's called Night of the Arts from the 22nd to the 23rd, and it's celebrating Black artists across all industries in the arts, and I'm super, super excited.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's we got some folks on the phone lines. All right, folks, this is The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. We're talking about the Centennial 100, which recognizes 100 people whose stories helped define Memorial University. If you've got someone you want to nominate and you want to talk about someone today, the lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. On the line, let me see, we've got John and Chris O'Day. How you folks doing?
Very well, and you?
Good.
This is John.
Good. Hey,
Hi,
John.
Adam. How are you?
Hey, Chris.
It's Chris here.
All right. So I won't spoil it for everyone. You tell me who you're phoning to talk about and who's because this person is on the list for the first 10. So who is it?
Agnes O'Day, our aunt.
Your Aunt Agnes. Tell us more about your Aunt Agnes and why you thought Aunt Agnes deserved to be on the part of the Centennial 100.
Well, apart from the fact the write-up that was provided on the website, Aggie to us, I mean, she has 4 names, actually. Agnes, Aggie, Aggo, depending on, what generation you encountered her. But apart from that, she was a well-known person in the city and in the province, and with her library background, also across the country. She had a great sense of humor. She was very social, huge store of knowledge about Newfoundland, anything about Newfoundland. You could give her a cue on something and she can go on and give you all sorts of information on things that were, just not in the mainstream of history of Newfoundland.
Yeah, well,
Adam, it's Chris here. There's 2 facets I think we look at here today. One is the academic side of Aggie, and the other is the fact that she was an aunt to 14 nieces and nephews, and she had she never married, had no children of her own. And all of the nieces and nephews thought that we were each Aggie's special niece or special nephew. She just had a way to embrace everybody to the point where you thought you were the special one, She and we had so many wonderful gatherings at the house, 69 Lamarching Road. I remember as a kid, I'd sit there and I'd pick the lint off my grandfather's socks while watching Aggie warm her backside by the fire. and she'd expose the garter and the girdles, and she just liked the warm backside. And that's a piece of Aggie that is engraved in my mind, because that was the Aggie that we knew as a kid. But she, and when she passed away, in her will, she said, what were the exact words, Johnny, that she said? She left her contents of her house to sequentially by draw to her 14 nieces and nephews. So that was a great family occasion where we all gathered around and shared stories of Aggie for a full day. So it was great fun. So, it was the personal side of Aggie, and there was also the academic bent. And she was the first the first librarian with any training. She had a diploma from the University of Toronto in 1932, and then got a degree in library science in 1939, and returned back to Newfoundland in 1952.
Wow. And she created, I was looking at the notes on it, she created the Center for Newfoundland Studies, which I spent a load of time in during my undergrad, some of it even studying. And I got to say, the Center for Newfoundland Studies, like I think now the stat is it contains over 93,000 volumes for info on Newfoundland and the province. I mean, that's just... to have the personal anecdotes, right, of your aunt Anne.
And there were 40 volumes when that was started.
40 to 93,000, right? And to hear the personal side plus the academic side. I mean, it's quite the thing to have something like this, to remember someone who was so important on the family and professional side of things.
And when you think of the canon of Newfoundland history, you look at the books of Newfoundland, Encyclopedia of Newfoundland, George Story's book, and then Aggie's bibliography. I mean, I don't think there's another province that has that kind of collection of information about ourselves.
No, right? The bibliography of Newfoundland, yeah.
And that bibliography is in 2 volumes. I actually got my tape measure out yesterday, and I measured it. It's 4 inches thick. So it's a huge undertaking, but it's an undertaking that Aggie, she spent basically 50 years of her life collecting information, and she always had a little scrap of paper in her purse, and anything and everything related to written word on Newfoundland that she saw anywhere, no matter where she was, she took out a little notebook and jotted down a few notes. So this was all done when there was long before personal computers, so it was a tedious manual process that she undertook for a 50-year period in her life.
Wow. I love that picture of her receiving the degree of Doctor of Laws in 1987, because is that the one in the Center for Newfoundland Studies? Because I've seen that, because like when I was preparing for the show today, I was like, I've seen this picture tons of times, and I figured it had to be there.
And you notice that smile. That was Aggie continuously.
Yeah.
She had her father's, our grandfather's sense of humor. In fact, in some of my archives, I've got exchanges between her as a young child and her father, exchanging stories that are funny and amusing. And anytime we get together for a dinner, family or friends, Aggie, if she was available, was always included. And as soon as she sat down, the stories would just open up. I remember saying to a friend of my wife's sister, the Murphys, and two of the children were at our dinner table because of Jan's sister was here as well. Aggie was at that table, and she looked at the two of them and said, "You've got the Mediterranean eyes in the family." And we had no idea what she was talking about. And lo and behold, she tells us that they related to us. That's how acute Aggie was in meeting anybody. You had to be prepared. She was going to make a connection somehow to you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And Adam, she was a consummate note taker right up until the end. You know, she was in palliative care at St. Clair's in her last stage of her life. And I was in there to visit her one day, and I saw a little scrap of paper at the bedside table in the hospital room. And she jotted down, you know how you jot down 5. You put down 4 vertical strokes and 1 horizontal stroke. Then when you want to count 5 more, you do the same thing. She had the names of the people that visited her in hospital and counted how many times each one visited. So that was her final entry in her life's bibliography, right to the time she passed away.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and you know, our father was the one who had the most checks on that little slip of paper.
Oh, there you go.
I have to tell you one story about at her funeral, because this was so much the way we looked at Aggie. My sister Eileen and my cousin Shane got together, and of course with Moya, Shane's wife, and they were going to put together the readings that they would prepare, so that during the sermon they could get up and talk about Aggie. Well, the liturgical committee came along, and they sort of imposed themselves in this little meeting that was going on and suggested, now here's what we're going to do. And it was not the same as what the family wanted to do. Well, they got a little pushy. So Shane and Eileen decided, okay, what we'll do in all the readings, God will not be a he will be a she. So they read out all the readings with she for God.
Oh, Guys, I got to get, there's some other folks on the line waiting, but I want to say thank you so much, John and Chris, for calling and talking about your Aunt Aggie, and just for really kind of uplifting from the post here, but for everyone to get just an idea of who she was as a person. I think it's just great for you guys to have shared that.
Well, delighted to be. Our pleasure included.
All right, boys, be well, and thanks again.
All right, and hi, Lisa.
Hello.
See you, Lisa. All right.
Before I go to the lines, any thoughts there on?
Center for Newfoundland Studies, what a gem to have in the province. It's and so many people use it, not just students. Many people come to use it. It's an incredible resource, and what a legacy to have associated with your name.
And all the note-taking details I did.
Hilarious.
So good. All right, we've got Heidi Coombs is on the line. Hi. Hey, welcome back, Heidi.
Yes, you can't get rid of me now.
No, you're on Friday talking about letters to Joey Smallwood. And who are we? Well, I know who we're going to talk about today, but you tell me. Who are we talking about in the list of 10?
Oh, my gosh. Dr. Max House.
Yeah.
What an inspiration. So I work in the Office of Professional and Educational Development at the med school, which originated I'm in the telemedicine unit myself now. But growing up here in St. John's, I remember hearing about telemedicine at Memorial, something about satellites and this groundbreaking program and Dr. Max House. And I remember seeing a satellite on top of the education building back in the 80s, which I thought was pretty neat. But it wasn't until I started working at the Faculty of Medicine about 10 years ago that I started wondering, why are we not bragging about this more? Because it was such a globally groundbreaking program. And, of course, it was led by Dr. House. So what happened back in the 70s, the Canadian Space Program was looking for ways to use satellite technology to broadcast services to rural and remote parts of the country. And Dr. House had lived in rural Newfoundland, and he knew that physicians in rural areas, they had no access to continuing medical education, which they needed to maintain their licenses and their practices. And he also knew firsthand the challenges of providing medical services in rural areas. And so he and an incredible team submitted a proposal and for this model to provide medical education through satellites and also to transmit medical data between hospitals. And they got the funding, and they were only one of 14 programs in the country at the time. And their model became sustainable, so they were able to keep it going. And there's still continuing medical education programs offered at my office today. And it became such a global, it was just groundbreaking. And Dr. House spoke at conferences all the time. He was in high demand. The unit set up medical education programs in Africa and South America. So they had this significant global reach. I think more people need to know about it and know about Dr. House and how inspirational. And he took this idea and ran with it, and he became known worldwide for this.
Yeah, in the late 70s, to be like, I have an idea. Let's use a closed circuit satellite hookup and start this thing. It's not like today when you have an idea about something online because of like the interconnectedness of it all. Like this was for telemedicine back then. Oh my gosh, wow. I met him actually when he was a lieutenant governor. When I was doing my poli-sci degree, briefly, we had a tour of Government House back then. It was, it was great to meet him a long time ago.
I didn't know him myself, but what an inspiration. And in those early days, like I've heard stories about the team, having to climb up on top of the cottage hospitals and set up the satellite dishes and everything. So it was very new, groundbreaking, and pioneering work.
Yeah. Excellent. Heidi Coombs, thanks so much for coming back on the show to talk about Max House.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks.
Cheers. Heidi Coombs there. And I'm just looking at my notes again here because I don't want to get the date wrong. Born in Glovertown in 1926. Grew up during the Great Depression. Attended a 2-room high school, right? Goes on Memorial University through it and starts this telemedicine thing. Kind of wild.
It's amazing.
Impressive.
Yeah. How people even think to
to
be able to do that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's but it also such a part of all the stories that you hear from the university. If you think of the folks who've been a part of it and what they've done, and just their connections, and I like what Heidi was talking about of how it reached other parts of the world too.
Yeah, I often wonder if he, really started kind of in some ways, the technology revolution that we're seeing now in the province with all the tech companies that have been starting with, many of them have their roots at the university, as Nicole knows.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And I think it speaks a lot to the culture at the university too. Like, it's not just go read your books, whatever. Like, the culture encourages you to, number one, think out of the box. And number two, you have the support of people around you that are like-minded to help you pursue those goals and wild ideas. So it's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
And the spirit is there, right?
Yeah.
And because we were talking for yourself as someone who's newer, younger, I should say.
Yes.
To notice that at the university, and then to trace it back to folks like Max House. Frank Holden is on the line, calling from St. John's. Hi, Frank.
Yes. Hello. Good afternoon.
How you doing?
Not bad.
Thoughts? You got someone you want to talk about?
Yes, I can't let this opportunity pass without mentioning a prof that I had who is known and remembered by a number of other people, not because he founded anything famous or did anything famous for Newfoundland, because he wasn't even a Newfoundlander. And he was a graduate from Temple University. He taught in the education faculty the methods of teaching English for high school teachers. That was his specialty. His name was Dr. Frank Wolf, and I took a course from him in the early 1980s. He had one arm, if anybody still remembers that. One active arm. He had lost half of the other arm at the elbow somewhere else in some accident or other. But he's memorable to me, and I'm sure he's memorable to a number of other people, because I've talked to a number of other people every now and then from various different backgrounds who took that course with him and found him amiable, personable, and actually a friend to the student, who sat up there in front of his classes and tried to get people to think and to dialogue with him in as good-humored a way as possible. That's why Frank Wolf is remembered. I don't know where he came from after Temple University. I don't know where he has gone since, and I don't know how long he was at Memorial. But he's memorable, and you may get a few more other calls from other people who took that course with Dr. Frank Wolf, who had the pleasure to be in his classes while he was here in the 1980s. It was when I was doing my education year. Anyway, that's all I wanted to comment about.
Frank Holden, thank you so much for talking with Professor Wolf there. And I'm sure others out there are listening now and know exactly what you're talking about. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Quite the thing, right? Because you go through a university or any post-secondary, you're going to make connections with profs who you're going to remember forever. And it's such a special thing. And you're right. It's not necessarily about, they did this and that's remembered forever, which is also great, but just that human connection and how you can carry that into your future is such a big, big thing. Any profs stand out? You don't have to name any, Nicole, but what did you find for your undergrad in connecting with profs? And because we were just talking about just the creativity and the thought process around and the encouragement around that at the university. But what else did you find?
I found at Memorial especially, I'll give a huge shout out to the business administration program as a whole. The professors there, they pushed you in a good way. So it wasn't this is the curriculum. Everything was practical. This is how it's going to translate to the outside world. They gave you certain, we had to do all these group presentations. I remember my sales class, I had to pitch, and then the professor would, they weren't going to let you have it easy. They would come back to you quite difficult. And now I look at it in Vervin today where I'm in sales, it's that was helpful because
that's good practice.
Exactly. It's truly what it is in the real world, and they really prepare you for when you're leaving school to have those practical life skills. So I would say every professor that I encountered at MUN did a very, very good job at that.
I remember it was Dr. Boswell who in poli-sci and taught me about why municipal politics is interesting. I took a municipal politics class and loved it. And now years later, on the air, I do lots of coverage about municipal issues. And actually, we've got a show coming up next week, folks, and we'll tell you about that one later. But anyways, it was very helpful for me for where I am right now. Lisa,
I do believe he wrote a municipal handbook.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
I recall when I was deputy mayor of Clarenville reading that every single semester because it was so helpful and so practical. And to Nicole's point, it's really interesting. You know, I think of professors who have an impact not just in the classroom but outside of it. So case competitions, for example, and our Faculty of Business Administration team recently won second place in the Molson International Case Competition, and an incredible history of success there. And it is thanks to, you know, faculty like Peggy Cody, Alex Vazarek, who are committed to those off hours and work with the students to help them out.
You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today we're talking about the Centennial 100, recognizing 100 people whose stories help define Memorial University for its 100th anniversary for its centennial. If you've got someone who you want to talk about, someone you feel should be recognized for their work, their passion, their influence, their connection to you, call us, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. Kate Story is on the line. Hi, Kate.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. You're hanging out, talking on the radio.
Yeah.
Monday. Tell us who you're calling to talk about.
Well, I've been asked to call in to talk about my father, George Story, who, you know, is a fairly well-known figure in Newfoundland, Labrador. When I was a kid going to school, I used to dread the teachers would Story, they'd say, and they'd look at me and they'd say, any relation to George Story? And I'd be like, yes, he's my father. And then they'd say, oh, he taught me English. And then I'd wait and they'd inevitably tell me what mark he'd given them. and if they then gave me a C, I was in trouble for the rest of the year. But he taught pretty much everyone of a certain series of generations English, because he really enjoyed actually teaching that sort of foundational English course at MUN. So a lot of people went through his classes, and he was generally remembered pretty fondly, actually. So I got off pretty lightly.
That's good.
Yeah, I think so. But yes, he's mostly known for the Dictionary of Newfoundland English, which he put together with Bill Kerwin and John Widdowson, and a lot of other helpers behind the scenes, like Mrs. Haley, who was just amazing. And that dictionary's had a huge influence, I think, and I'm not alone in that opinion, on the way that Newfoundland has come, how we've come to see ourselves as Newfoundland and Labradorians, I think. Yeah. Just the language, is so important. I know they were very inspired by the Dictionary of Jamaican English, which had come out years before, because language is so important. It describes reality. And that book, I find it very useful, as well as inspiring, funny, hilarious. It's great to dip into, and you just get such a sense of the preoccupations of our ancestors. Like if you go online and look it up, they've got this really handy search function where you can just type a word into the search bar there. And if you type in the word ice, you're going to see a lot of entries for the word ice. And so it just tells you what the preoccupations were of our forebears. And I use it a lot. I'm a writer and a theater artist. I use that dictionary a lot in my writing novels and such like that. And I know I'm not alone in that.
No, I mean, I remember buying a copy of it when I was in university, and I still have it at home, right? It was just one of those things, now, me coming up in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was just something, especially, like I was studying poli-sci, but folks, around me, that was one of the things we were doing, right? It's like, make sure you get a copy of this, because
that's right.
it just felt really important, and it felt like if you didn't have it, you were lacking something in your little book collection that you had at home because you're like, no, this is one of the ones you must have.
That's right. Yeah, they were very surprised and pleased. It turned out to be a bit of a bestseller, which you don't expect with an academic book.
No, you're like a dictionary that becomes a bestseller. It's like unless you're forcing people to buy it for like schools or something. No, right?
No, it's true. No, they were so pleased, and I think too, like I was going to school in the 70s and 80s in Newfoundland, and how do I put this? Like you were picked on if you had an accent. The teachers themselves had internalized that colonial shame, colonized shame. And I remember nobody would believe me when I said my dad was a Newfoundlander. They would just, because they knew he was this big cheese at the university guy with the corner office, right? And he wore tweed, jackets and smoked a pipe, and said, he is English. And I was like, no, he's not. He's a Newfoundlander. And I could not convince people. They couldn't believe that somebody could be big man on campus and be a Newfoundlander, because to be a Newfoundlander meant to be something shameful. We weren't much.
Do you think we undid that finally?
We're getting there.
Yeah. Okay.
There's still work to be done. I still experience, some shame. I live on the mainland. I live in Ontario, and I've had some shocking moments, of people making assumptions about me because I'm a Newfoundlander. Yeah. And then I noticed, there's still a little answering echo inside of me, sometimes where I'll I did internalize that shame a bit. I think there's still some pretty harmful stereotypes about Newfoundlanders out there, but, it's so much better than it was in the 70s and 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt when I came up and started going to the mainland, late 90s, early 2000s, I felt like maybe from what I was told, there was a shift, but there was still a lot there. And then, just wondering now kind of what it's like, and depending who you talk to, but going in the right direction anyways. We're
getting there.
Yeah, and part of the pride, Dictionary of Newfoundland English, right there. I'm just looking at a picture of it there. It's the yellow cover, right? Second edition, right. The one with the foreword by Rex Murphy. So there you go. Yeah. Thanks for agreeing to come on to the show to talk about your dad.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Kate.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, be well. Cheers.
Bye.
Kate Story there. Yeah.
George Story, an iconic name, I think, in the history of the province for sure. And I love the linguistics courses. I remember taking one from Harold Paddock, and he'd go around the room and ask everybody to pronounce a certain word. And then he would tell you what community you were from based on how you said that word.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
Incredible.
I remember, I was starting as a reporter, and I like the accent thing with my family in around like Glovertown, Coles Harbor area. It never really struck with me. I always thought that's how my family sounds. But then when I was a young reporter, some politician from that area was being interviewed, and I was like, oh my gosh. I caught the discernible accent for the first, because I lived away for most of my 20s, so it just never struck me about the accent side of things. But yeah, it's there. Nicole, when you first I've spoken with many folks who've kind of moved here from elsewhere, and then just the thoughts around kind of getting used to some of the accents and dialects. But one thing to move to Newfoundland, and then now you're dealing with sometimes with your work speaking with folks in America. Like, what do you find for some of the accent or the dialect differences, and just kind of being able to on one side say what are you at when you're here, but when you're talking to Americans, you can't say it.
Yeah, I actually have a pretty funny story about that. I think I was speaking with a prospect in the U.S. and his mom is actually from Newfoundland.
Oh, right on.
So there was a bit of a relation or an in there in that way, because it's not often I say, oh, I'm from Newfoundland. They're like, oh, I know where that is, and I was like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
But I guess coming here, it was a little hard to adjust. Not really the accents, it's just the pace.
Yeah.
It was really fast.
You're like, huh? I didn't imagine. Yes, but
Exactly.
I missed that.
Yeah, it was really fast. And I think even just hearing that story, I wasn't aware that was the perception of people from the province at words. And it just, I guess it's funny in a way in terms of the relatability, because I have a Nigerian accent and Americans have an American accent, and then there's a Newfoundland accent as well. And it's everyone has accents, different backgrounds, shouldn't tell a story in a negative way, about them, or how you perceive them in a sense. But it's just interesting to think about how I guess we all can unfortunately relate to stereotypes or way that we're perceived without even opening our mouths based off, well, I guess we're opening our mouth technically, but based off accents or even just saying where you're from. But that's very inspiring that book was released, because in Nigeria we have a language as well. It's apart from English, there's Pidgin, and it's sort of looked down on if you speak in Pidgin language, so to say. So that's just, I love that. I love that there's a book and it's a sense of pride, not something to be ashamed of. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and on the subject of accents, everyone, it's just such when you hear a different accent and you just think of, okay, this is part of who this person is, part of either their culture or from parts of rural Newfoundland and Labrador, right, to Nigeria, to Toronto, to Louisiana, whatever. I love hearing it. That hasn't always been possible, right? Because like you'd even hear with CBC back in the day, it's like, well, they want you to sound a certain way. And this is before my time, and this is just what I've been told. They don't say it anymore because they let me on the air. So I'll just say that. Let's go to Jamie Jackman, who's on the line. Hi, Jamie. How you doing?
Hi, Adam. How are you doing?
Good. Who are you going to? I mean, again, I know who everyone's going to talk about, but tell us who you're going to talk about.
Well, first of all, I'm super thrilled to have been, had the opportunity to call in to talk about the honor that Elder Jean Crane is being given, as one of their top 100 people for Memorial's, first 100 years. So that's who I'm calling in about. I had a few things written down. I was thinking about what can you say about somebody like Elder Jean Crane. So I thought I'd just put some of my thoughts down on paper and let you know about them.
Yeah, man, go for it.
Yeah,
and I'll say I had the honor and privilege to meet Elder Jean Crane when we had the show, and I mean you were there for that show too, when we were in Happy Valley Goose Bay 2 Novembers ago, and such a fantastic person to talk about. But just tell us what you wrote.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think this recognition just highlights the incredible life that she's led and continues to lead. She's touched countless lives in Labrador. I imagine she's actually been the answer to many, unspoken prayers in Labrador, especially before, we had a women's shelter here. She started out, tirelessly advocating for women here in Labrador. She helped bring the Libra House to life, which is our women's shelter here. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm actually pretty sure that her involvement with Memorial started as a way to get a seat at a table, basically, where she could continue advocating for, what she felt like was important to her people. And she's remained a fierce advocate ever since. And I like to think that, our approach to education here at Labrador campus is in that same spirit. We want what's best and what works best for the people here. So, Jean has always championed the importance also of Indigenous-led education. She doesn't talk about it. She lives it, offering her wisdom, generously, I think, to students, staff, visitors such as yourself, to the Labrador campus and to the Labrador Institute for years before that. She's 95 years young. She's still a force of nature. A beautiful force, like in the best way possible.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're in a room with her, as you know, you feel her presence deeply. Yeah. She's like, and I just hope that this recognition just shows her just how deeply appreciated and loved she is by all of us here in Labrador and really across the province.
Yeah, as we do this is the second show now on folks talking about connections and to the university and their communities and stuff. And with Elder Jean Crane, I mean, you just laid it out so well, right? Like just the stacks and stacks and stacks of building of connections and just generosity and what it all means and how far that will go beyond into like the next 100 years. I think it's really quite the thing. Absolutely, and I think the impact that she's had on me, just because, I've always kind of worked with her through community building kind of relationships and since my time here at the Labrador campus. But, I've seen her steady people who I think are, giants, like Ashley Consolo, who's the outgoing dean, and our current dean, Sylvia Moore, they would lean on her for so much. And she's so gracious and generous and still so full of life.
even to this day, she puts everybody at ease. And, I've learned a great deal from that. And I know we still, rely on her for her teaching and her and just her calmness in the face of sometimes chaos,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jamie, thanks for coming on the show to talk about Elder Jean Crane. And man, I hope all is well with you. I'll be in touch come spring to talk about the Pie Center for Northern Boreal Food Systems.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Adam, and thanks again for the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Be well.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Jamie there just mentioned Sylvia Moore, right? Associate VP of MUN's Labrador campus and Dean of its School of Arctic and Subarctic Studies. Sylvia's on the line right now. Hi, Sylvia. Oh, hello? We'll try it one more time.
Hear me?
Oh, hi, there you are. Gremlins in the system. How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Hi. I know Jamie was just talking about Elder Jean Crane, but you too want to talk about Elder Crane. I'm just wondering your thoughts on her being part of this list and just how important she is and has been over decades and decades.
Oh, absolutely! It's just such an honor to be able to know Jean. And also just to be able to come on the radio today and talk a bit about her. I met her first in 2013 when I first moved to Labrador, and I was working in the Inuit Bachelor of Education program, and Jean came in frequently to talk with the students and just also engaged me in a lot of conversations about the programming and what we might think about doing. And of course, she went on to then become part of the Labrador Institute Task Force before we were developed into a full campus here just a few years ago. She's such an incredible, wise woman, and as Jamie said, I cut the end of him talking with you. She just brings such calm. I know that when she walks into any room, whether it's a classroom or a meeting, the very first thing Jean does is go around and she speaks to every single person in the room and gives them a hug and just makes that very personal connection with them and just brings such love and warmth and calmness to a room. She's amazing.
Where would things be with the Labrador campus if not for Elder Jean Crane?
Oh, my goodness. I really don't know because her direct work with Memorial began back in 1979 when she was asked to be a Labrador representative on the Board of Regents. And just how hard she worked for education in Labrador and post-secondary education. She's been very enthusiastic and really encouraging about us developing this Labrador campus and developing programs that meet the needs of people here. And of course, having full community input and particularly Indigenous input into what's needed and the co-development of all the things that we do here. It's hard to think of what would happen if it were not for Jean guiding, encouraging, and working on that ever since 1979. That's a lot of time, and I certainly don't think we'd be in the same place at all.
No. Well, thank you for coming on the show to talk about Elder Jean Crane, Sylvia. I appreciate it.
Oh, she's a beautiful person. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sylvia Moore there, Associate VP of the university's Labrador campus and Dean of its School of Arctic and Subarctic Studies. I'll go back to my guests here in the studio, both Lisa Browne and Nicole Obiodiaka. Thoughts on... you've met Jean Crane.
I have not,
No, you
actually.
haven't? Oh,
No,
I just
not.
assumed you would have.
No, I have not. She's been instrumental, though, I understand, working with Memorial and many others around the path to reconciliation and certainly a proponent for Indigenous-led education. And so you'll see at the Labrador campus that the approach is very different. And it's thanks to people like her and sharing her knowledge and expertise and guidance.
So where do things go from here? We've got 10 names out so far. One of the people is here in the studio with us. What's next? Like how when will the next lot be revealed, and how long will this go for? Because the nominations are still open too, till July 1st.
Nominations
I
are
believe.
still open, mon.ca/100. And feel free. It's a very easy process, 2 questions, I do believe. And so the next lot of 10 will come out in February, so very soon. And each person tells an incredible story, and they are contributing to Memorial. And just like Nicole here, who's made an incredible contribution not just to the university, but also to the province, as you've heard, through her community work, I think you're going to really see the impact that Memorial University has in the province and internationally through our teaching, research, and public engagement.
Nicole, what do you think about when you look at the list that you're included with so far, but you're hearing it with some of the other folks? What are your thoughts about them and their stories?
I think it's a very impressive list, and I think something that does stand out to me that was common amongst everyone was around not accepting the status quo, which I think is very, very important. Like if you see that there's something that could be improved or changed, even if it wouldn't directly impact your life, but how that could impact someone else down the line, that seems to be something that everyone who is on this list was thinking about in different ways or forms, but it's definitely a commonality. And I think that's very important. And I'm happy to see them being recognized for the work that they've done in the community and in Memorial and beyond.
Yeah, it really is. That's such a through line for that list, right? Whether it's someone talking about telemedicine, Indigenous-led education, right? Your work that we talked about earlier in the show. Lisa, also, I mean, you could, is it Glenroy Blunden?
Glenroy Blunden, yeah, really well-known name, and we have the Glenroy Blunden Center. He was from Beta Verde, and a wheelchair user who came to the university in the 80s, lived at Doyle Residence, and really changed how people thought about accessibility and pushed for more recognition for the importance of rights for people who had different mobility. And so he made an incredible contribution to the university, and we have the Blunden Center now named for him, which works with people to ensure their academic success, people who may have a disability. And so I was delighted to see his name there.
It must be to go through all those. I know it's a lot, right? It's a lot of work, a lot of submissions, but then just to kind of sit back, and especially when certain ones, I think, would probably, all of them will grab attention, obviously, but some must kind of strike you more than others in a way, too, for your connection to things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the only ones that we haven't mentioned, actually, I note Janet Gardner, and she was the first woman accountant in the province. And, just looking at her family's contribution, we have the Gardner Institute named for her husband. Her daughter works at the university. So there's lots of family connections. I think of Christian Pittman, who's also on the list, who works at the Grenfell campus, working with Indigenous students, and 25% of the students at Grenfell identify as Indigenous, and she's making such a difference. So they all contribute in so many different ways.
Yeah, and it's I could honestly, like, these types of stories and hearing about who people are, who some folks were, and either the legacy that they're still creating or the legacy that they've left. I always find those types of stories fascinating, right? Yeah. Because these are stories of folks who are building and have built not just the university, but the province.
Very much so. You can't separate one without the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Nicole? You got to go back to work, don't you? I mean, Lisa, you do too. All right.
I'm happy to stay.
Right. Well, thank you both for this conversation today. It's enjoyable as always, just to hear about everyone on the list. I look forward to hearing for more names as they come out, and to see the end of and to really dig through the 100 folks. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's it for today's show. So if you have thoughts on someone from who you want to nominate for the Centennial 100, which recognizes 100 people whose stories help define Memorial University, give us a call on the Signal line, 709-576-5260. And you can email us thesignal@cbc.ca. I'm going to be away for the rest of the week. I'm taking a flight to Goose Bay this evening, and we're going up to Nain tomorrow. We're doing some work with the OK Radio Society. Plus, I'll be speaking to some folks for a show that will come in the next couple of weeks. So Jamie Fitzpatrick will be in for me. And tomorrow, he's talking mental wellness. How do you take care of your mental wellness in the winter months? Give us a call. We've got some folks from the mental health community lined up to be guests in the studio tomorrow. But with Jamie and those folks, give them a call to talk about mental wellness and mental health and yourself in the winter months. The lines will be open. Thanks so much for listening.